Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank all of you for being here today. I know it's not always the easiest thing to hop on a plane the first Monday of the year and travel to CES, but if you think about it, it's a little bit like a New Year's Day cold plunge, but for work. You kind of dread it at first, but then you get here and it's kind of wonderful, and there's really no better way to start the year than here, where you can see some of the new products from the most innovative companies in the world. You can connect with old friends and colleagues, and you can have conversations and dialogue with some of the smartest people in the industry, which we're hoping to do today as we talk about the funnel. As Karen said, you know, the funnel is collapsing, and while there is still a journey, that journey is changing very dramatically. We live in a world where people are going directly from content experiences into commerce experiences, and what was once where you invested heavily at the top of the funnel and you tried to reach as many people, and a smaller percentage of those people converted at the end, we're now seeing a more consistent flow across that. And so I'm incredibly honored today to welcome this panel where we can dive into the funnel and get their experience on what we're doing. So joining me today, first we have Terri Wang, who's driving growth and experimentation at OpenAI. We have Thomas Ranese, who is leading Intuit's marketing and brand strategy, unifying storytelling and experience and AI to power growth. We have Nili Klenoff, who is shaping the future of commerce and media and innovation at Mastercard. And Jess, Madsen, who's reimagining CRM and personalization at eBay. So yeah, let's start with the big question. What is happening with the funnel? Is the funnel going away? How is that shaping and starting to change the journey? So Terri, I'll start with you. So many brands, start and focus at the top of the funnel. Many brands have started to divide their investment across brand and performance. Can you talk about how you approach optimizing sort of the end of the journey and what that looks like for OpenAI and why it's more impactful than the classic sort of top-down approach that many brands are still taking?
So I think it's important to have a balanced approach and think about like just user first and what customer journey makes sense. I think we're blessed at OpenAI, and especially with like ChatGPT around the brand awareness, but it's actually really around helping adoption and use cases that resonate with users. And in some ways, we expect a lot of users to come and look at this blank page, put in a query or chat, and essentially get an answer. And I think that's a high bar, especially as we start expanding a lot more internationally. So it's like, how do we bring along more of, how do we help the product expand into educating users, as well as like enabling more like discoverability, enabling a little bit more personalization. But I think generally with like conversion driving and growth, I think we see a lot of systems and scale and experimentation that AI can enable. And that's like been really exciting because we have so many different growth hypotheses. I think all of us do. And the fact that we can like use AI to help be a force multiplier and a velocity kind of agent to like help us do more and test those ideas out faster, that's been like the key unlock for growth.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how everyone knows and everyone's kind of heard, because it's in the cultural zeitgeist now, that the leverage that you have is really at the end of the experience and getting people into that journey. So Thomas, when you look at the journey today, what do you think is going to replace the traditional funnel as we talk about it? And do you think that CMOs are going to start to look more like product people than traditional marketers as we move towards the future?
Great questions. Well, on the latter question, I think CMOs and marketers generally need to think of themselves more as technologists, even more than product leaders, and really be comfortable with data and software and AI and thinking about how you orchestrate the entire customer experience. And I would call it experience maybe even more than journey for that reason.
100%.
But at the same time, I still think marketing is going to be an art and a science. And if we lose sight of the art and the storytelling, the emotion, even in the AI journeys that we're creating, I think those brands the ones who do bring that kind of art to the science, I think will stand out. So I think thinking about ourselves as technologists and storytellers is how I would think about marketing today. Look, on the funnel, I think the funnel still exists. I just think to the points that have been made, it's not linear. It hasn't been linear for a long time. I think in some ways the funnel is more about customer mindset than it is about sequential steps in a journey that you felt like you had control over, which honestly we probably never had control over anyway. But customers now can come in and out of that experience at different points. And it's understanding the mindset and the moment they're in and meeting them in that moment, right? I think about just my personal experience on Instagram, way down the funnel on products I've never heard of, right? And I might not buy that product without actually then going to do research somewhere else before I come back. But even and for Intuit, we have QuickBooks customers that have been loyal, running their business with our bookkeeping software for years, but don't know that we do marketing, payroll, and payments. And so now we've got to get them up the funnel, even though they're an engaged, loyal customer. And so how do you use content? How do you use other surfaces to start to engage people where they are?
I think it's a great point that everything, it is an experience now, and building those seamless connections between every single touch point is absolutely critical, and it requires technology for you to be able to do that, which is, super, super powerful. So Jess, at eBay, eBay is an amazing company because you have buyers and sellers, and one day someone's buying a rare Pokemon card, and the next day they're selling a backpack. And so when you think about CRM in that context and always staying relevant, how are you thinking about going from awareness to purchase to loyalty from a CRM perspective?
Yeah. So I'll start with an example to make it tangible. I'm really into bonsai, and if you don't know what that is, they're essentially trees in a very small pot.
That's so cool.
I think so.
Yeah.
And in the art of bonsai, the pot is actually half of the composition. So you've got the tree and the pot. And the thing about bonsai and these pots is that they're really hard to find. You cannot just roll into a garden center or a Home Depot. Not enough people think bonsai is cool for them to be readily available. And so historically, what used to happen was I'd go on this endless scroll through hundreds of different pots to find that exact right one. And now, with AI, I can very easily share my intent. I can share a photo of my bonsai and very quickly find that needle in the haystack. So all of this friction is removed from my buying experience. And that's really a game changer for me. I don't like shopping that much, and so removing the friction is really valuable. But I think the interesting thing and the magical thing about AI is not just that it removes friction and really collapses the buying process, but it meets customers where they are. And a lot of our customers at eBay actually enjoy dwelling in the search and trying to find that exact right dress for Friday night or the trading card that can complete their collection. And so AI can build bespoke, custom-fit experiences based on who you are, how you shop, and really meet the moment quite well. And so I think that's sort of the magical thing about it, is it can meet anybody where they are. And with that, you start thinking about how you measure growth differently. And no longer are we focused on getting dollars in the door today. You really can end up moving the goalposts out and focusing on building lifetime value and just delivering relevant, effortless, enjoyable experiences for all of our customers.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it really builds on what Thomas was saying about the technology, like using AI to remove friction, but also having to change the way and the outcomes that we're optimizing against is super powerful. I think when you think about outcomes, it leads us right to commerce media. And when you think about commerce media, that it really sits at that intersection of brand and performance. It sits at that area of storytelling and trans creation. And so, how are you seeing those lines blurred, Nili, and how are you starting to approach that from a commerce media perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think everything I'm hearing points to the fact that the lines are already blurred, and it's because the landscape is blurred. You've got consumers interacting across a web of channels, devices, environments, right? Obviously, there's social. There's, especially internationally, messaging apps. You've got like full commerce journeys happening there. Obviously, agentic, and agentic is exploding. We all know that. We just released our holiday report. Over 50% of younger consumers are now trusting AI for their recommendations more than their own. So, you've got this just incredibly blurry world, and I would argue it's only going to get blurrier.
Yeah.
How we see commerce media is actually sharpening the lines, right? Because of the data that underpins it, the ability to understand where the consumer is in terms of their relationship with a given brand, where they are in the funnel, but then also use the context of the environment that they're in to really deliver the right experience, the right message in that moment. So I kind of see commerce media as the thing that will sharpen those lines really and become a service and a tool, an essential tool to brands, to consumers, and ultimately to publishers. And I think it's kind of why we're all investing in it right now.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. So I think what we're seeing, like, if you look at what Terri was saying, like the journey is still there. It's really important, even for them to really be focused on the end of the journey. As Thomas was saying, where everything is connected, we're using technology to remove friction, but at the same time, we are establishing clearer boundaries because we have to, in order to be relevant to that consumer experience, we have to have an understanding of where they are along their journey and just provide them with the tools to make that whatever they want to do next easier. That's amazing. Thank you. So if we are in this area where we're starting to see everything the lines blur at the same time, that they're getting more clear and we have a better understanding of where people are and people have this ability to go right from a content experience into a commerce experience, whatever that commerce experience looks like, how do we have to think about as organizations, how do we have to operate this way? It's interesting for us, if you look at the funnel, we've assigned media channels to very specific parts. We've built agencies around different roles within the funnel. We've created departments within companies assigned to just those different parts of the funnel. But I think as we think about the journey now and building these connected experiences, we have to start to evolve to align with that. So, Jess, I think for you, because you sit at that intersection of personalization and data and commerce in some way, what are the sort of cultural shifts or organizational shifts that we have to navigate in order to really take advantage of the changes happening in the journey?
Yeah. I love this question. And so at eBay, we're in the middle of this transformation. So I spend a lot of time thinking about this. And a few things. I think first, when you sit at the intersection of data and AI and MarTech and marketing and commerce and experiences, it is no longer good enough to be really excellent in your narrow functional lane. That doesn't work anymore. And so I spend a lot of time talking to the team. We are general managers of the experience. We need to understand how the system works, how all of the pieces fit together. And like we talked about in the beginning, you reinforce that message again and again. We are GMs of the experience, and we have to understand and hold together all of the threads. You don't need to have all the answers. You can get inputs from other people, but you need to digest that yourself and make your own decisions within your own head. So I think that's step one. I think the second thing I think a lot about is co-authoring your plan, your vision, your roadmap, where you're going. And I think one of the failure modes I see is historically in businesses, the business owner would go away and they would create their roadmap or their plan or their vision. And then they go around to their partners and they try to get people to buy in on it. And what's really happening is they're actually like selling this plan. They've already invested in it and they feel ownership over it and they're selling it into people. And the funny thing I think about a lot of people is we don't want to be told what to do. My kid, if you have kids, you know. And so I think a lot about co-authorship, and I can get compliance if I sell you on my idea, but I'm not going to get the best of you. I'm not going to get the person who will look under rocks and around corners. So we spend a lot of time co-authoring and stacking hands on where we're going and developing an integrated, cohesive plan. I think the last thing, so this is more at the leadership level, but then you've got these massive teams who are making all of these micro decisions every single day. And I spend a lot of time thinking about how I can increase velocity of decision-making, quality of decision-making amongst the team. And here I do this thing called a brief process, and that is in very plain English. I'll write on a few pieces of paper where it is we're going, what the guardrails are, and what the anti-goals are, what the things we don't want to be doing. So I write that down, super plain, clear English. I cascade it to my direct reports. They then have to digest it and rewrite it in their own words and then go a click deeper in terms of how does their corner of the world support the vision. They play it back to me. Once we've aligned on the intent, it cascades down to their direct reports and so on and so forth. And what happens at the end is it takes extra time for sure, but everybody in the team has internalized and digested exactly what role they play in supporting us in getting where we need to go. And then the velocity of decision making, they are able to operate independently and make solid decisions every single day, knowing that they're doing it in service of sort of the path we're going. So those are sort of three different things I tend to lean on really heavily in my own world.
I love that. I mean, it's so cool. I think it speaks to what Penny was saying earlier around you've got to say it's not 7 times, it's 50 times,
Yeah.
and forcing people to put it in their own words is really, really powerful. I think I worked with someone once who said that collaboration is not a skill, it's a muscle, and if you don't work it out, it atrophies. And so creating a ritual around collaboration on the brief back and being very clear is really a powerful tool to drive that cohesiveness, because it's that cohesiveness across the experience in all of those micro decisions that people are making that's going to unlock growth. And at the end of the day, we're all here because we're trying to grow our companies, we're trying to hit goals, and we're trying to drive success. And so Nili, I'm just curious, when you think about this customer experience and this in service of growth, how do you make it operational and just something that's aspirational? It's not just a goal, it's something that we're living every day.
Yeah, look, I would say, like, really simply, a good customer experience is one that is a valuable one. So for consumers, it's giving them what they expect, what they want, what delights them. For a business owner, for a brand, it's helping them meet whatever their business objectives are, whether that's increasing reach, whether it's increasing frequency, recency, incrementality. It's all of those things. And so delivering the customer experience, the best one, those outcomes is not something that should be aspirational, really needs to be core to the operating model. To put it perhaps maybe too simply, but I will for the purpose of the panel, to me it comes down to data, right? Having the data, being able to engineer and mine the data for the insights to be able to deliver those outcomes both for consumers and for brands. So the right message to the right consumer at the right time, really personalized to the consumer, again, based off of where they are and what their expectations are and their context. And then again, for a brand, it's any one of those objectives. So, quite simply, data kind of being the key to operationalizing a valuable customer experience at scale.
Yeah, it's so true. Creating that equitable value exchange with customers or potential customers is so critical at the outset, and data is obviously an important part of making that happen. Right now, we have more visible data and more actionable data than we ever have had before. AI is an important tool in helping us to start to use that data in better ways. So, Terri, I'm curious, and we work pretty closely together, so we have a lot of these conversations. So it's a little bit of a loaded question, but as an AI company, how are you thinking about the AI experience when it comes to marketing? How are we starting to, and maybe I can answer some of this because we are having some of these conversations. But how are you thinking about using AI to make this journey better, surfacing the right data, being even smarter about personalization?
Okay, so I think basically all of this stuff resonates. The direct answer to your question is I think we need to be very careful and intentional about how we think through user data in general, just respecting the intent and the trust that we have with users, especially when they're in product, and serving those journeys very differently than when it's off product. So fundamentally, that has a very different gradient, in my opinion, at least, in terms of the level of risk and trust that we want to have around a lot of those interactions. So that's probably the challenge, is that I think if we wanted to make things as personalized and as relevant to the user, the temptation to do more outside of the product is going to be high. But from a principle standpoint, that's just not something that is worth exploring, in my opinion. What's really important is to generally educate and bring everyone along on the user adoption and the customer journey of like what AI could do for you. And so even expanding like the amount of things that it's like more about educating broadly to users. Like, hey, you can do this. You can use it for shopping. You can use it for health, improvement. You can use it for wellness. There's like things that maybe don't, directly relate to productivity, but could actually give users a lot more agency. So more inspiring, I want to say, experiences in those realms versus being like highly personalized outside of the product. In product, however, I think there's a lot of room for improvement and like experiences that we want to continue to test. I think the way we operate is more pod structures. So think of it as like engineering, data science, marketing, product. We work together just to think about what is the jobs to be done, or what could be the new way that a user could do something differently in a differentiated way. And a lot of this is just based on our users coming back. Are we honoring and respecting that intention and serving it well? And then the models underlying, obviously, the product are helping to do that personalization element.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to talk about the product experience becomes also a marketing experience. And so I think, we also work with Intuit. Intuit, I think, is one of the most exciting brands that I've been on. I think you're leaning into AI in a more powerful way than a lot of our other clients, and you're certainly quick to abandon old rules in favor of what works. As a lifelong TurboTax user, I will also say that the product experience is also incredible. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about Intuit is that you are thinking holistically about everything, every consumer touch point. And so, I'm curious, how do you start to bring that brand strategy, that creative strategy, those product teams together to create that truly connected experience for users?
I love this question, just the line of thinking that experience is the marketing. As a brand marketer at heart, I've spent most of my career in tech marketing, where I really believe product is brand and brand is product, full stop. Like the two are inseparable. And so the more that you can help people experience your product, that's the best selling point, and delivering value, as you said earlier. And so in today's world, actually, we have a new partnership with OpenAI, where now you can experience the Intuit platform without being on the Intuit platform. And so we're working with OpenAI so that we can help power financial decisions for customers within ChatGPT. And so helping them find the right financial insights, recommendations, even take action with Intuit tools right within ChatGPT, which is really exciting, because now first of all, we're meeting customers where they are, which is really important in everything we're talking about. It's like you have to figure out their mindset the moment they're in and meet them where they are. And now a lot of them are in ChatGPT and using these AI tools on a daily basis. And so let's be there for them when they're asking these really important financial questions. But it's also now opening the door for millions of people to experience Intuit without being on the Intuit platform, to then welcome them in with the trust and the confidence that I think we're also echoing here. That's really important, particularly in the financial space.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I love the idea of we're talking about building boundaries in certain places, but also eroding those boundaries. And the product itself, the boundaries between the product and what's marketing is also eroding, and we're just meeting consumers where they are. It's absolutely incredible. I think, 2026 is going to be an incredible year for many reasons. But I think it's that we're starting to explore this area, and we're starting to get it up to a place as marketers where we know that every single consumer touch point, whether it's paid or earned or owned, or anytime we're touching consumers anywhere in their experience, is an opportunity for us to build those relationships. And I think as we start to think about that opens up the opportunity to redefine what marketing is, what media is, and it's incumbent on us as marketers to start to take advantage of that. So, back to you, Thomas, on this one. So, how are you thinking about how you design the creative? How are you thinking about messaging and product services in a different way to achieve that?
Yeah, well, I think again, echoing a lot of the themes that have been said, I think product and marketing working hand in glove. And almost being a boundaryless team, right? Where you don't see the seams between those organizations. I think in tech, in particular, that's really critical. And for us, we have 100 million customers on our Intuit platform, and that's Credit Karma, TurboTax, QuickBooks, MailChimp, right? And so we've had an opportunity, tens of millions of impressions or interactions are happening on our platform every week. And so that's an opportunity for us together to really help show customers what more we can do in delivering value for them. And so we've built an internal agentic solution called Marketing Studio that brings together product marketing, brand and creative, CRM, ops and analytics to really think about how do we serve the next best feature or function or message to the right customer at the right time, at the moment that we can show them the value that the product can deliver. And it's working. Like, we're seeing incredible, meaningful uplifts in adoption of new features. But most importantly, and back to the idea of delivering real value for the customer, right? Our QuickBooks customers who are now discovering our agentic tools and payments are getting paid 5 days faster. TurboTax customers who are able to actually file with AI tools are now getting their taxes done 12% faster, right? And so delivering that value, continuing to show it within the product, and doing that in a seamless way where now agentic tools are actually making that even more possible.
Yeah, it's really cool, and I think the one of the most interesting parts about that, and where it gets a little bit challenging for us as marketers, is around personalization. And I think when you start to think about personalization, discretion is key, and making sure that we're exhibiting a level of discernment with what we're sharing, what we know, making sure that we're delivering the right message at the right time to the right person, reflecting that kind of context is a real challenge. And so, Jess, for you, I think that there's personalization at times can feel a little bit robotic, and I think as customers, we're accustomed to seeing our name pop up in banners or certain places, and we're kind of grown used to it. So how are you using automation to make personalization still feel authentic and real and meaningful for a customer?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, personalization can feel robotic at times, for sure. I don't think it's always an issue. It takes more energy and time and resources to actually make it feel authentic. So if it's not adding value in your process, maybe robotic is fine. Where I sit at eBay, it actually does matter quite a bit, because so central to the eBay brand and strategy is this sense of community and humanity. And then within that, I operate in CRM channels, in loyalty channels, where relationship is baked into my name. And it is hard to have a relationship with a robot or a computer. So it's very important in the weight of my world that personalization feels authentic and seamless. And so there's two things I think about. The first is, out of the gates, we make explicit that personalization and experience are on an even playing field. And so if I have the right recommendation, the right content, but the wrong experience, that doesn't fly. It doesn't work. So I think being very intentional and baking it into the system that these things do sit on an even playing field was key. The second thing we're doing at eBay is we're not just personalizing the merchandise, but we're aiming to personalize the meaning behind it as well. Yeah. And so rather than saying, thanks for your purchase, we want to connect that to the broader meaning and say, thanks for giving this jacket a second home. Thanks for helping a small business. Thanks for fueling somebody's passion. So we really try to have an emotive connection and tie that to something bigger than the transaction. And we think that builds more sort of enduring loyalty.
That's super cool. I love the idea of attaching meaning to these things, and it takes personalization to another level. And we're using the signals that we're getting from customers to help establish that meaning. I'm curious, Terri, because I think we're using AI as a big part of our opportunity to start to make sense of these signals. And we're using that from a real-time perspective. It allows us to be much more responsive to specific queries from customers, the content or the context in which they're consuming it. How do you think teams need to evolve to be able to take advantage of the signals that we're getting in real time? I think we're seeing it from an OpenAI perspective in the use case is the query that they're asking ChatGPT, using that signal to reinforce where we're going from a messaging perspective, but to have the team structure to be able to do that. I'm curious how you're setting up your team and using those levels of signals.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, or at least from a team standpoint, is that we're pretty fluid. I use the word pod structure because it just helps create more agency with the group of, I want to say, a pretty lean group of individuals to just be empowered to make decisions quickly with the data that they have. And I think the data science element is actually really key to that. Kind of to your point around like that emotive messaging, I would probably argue that with AI, every user actually has given some context to ChatGPT about how they would like to be communicated to, or their preferences, or their style of communication. And so there's a world where like how we respond or how we talk to that user is deeply individualized and like unique to the preferences that user has. So some people may prefer more emotive messaging. Maybe some people may prefer a little bit more direct, or maybe more kind of motivational messaging. Like, so I think that's like the opportunity. Again, the complexity here is that once people are in the product, I think respecting that personalization or that context that they're providing in the product, and then taking that outside of product is where things get a little bit trickier. So I generally am of the mindset that let's make the best like product-led growth motion and just honor that there's already so many users coming here. How do we make sure that they feel heard and their intent is honored, and then they are getting the value that is unique to what they think is valuable from ChatGPT, because there's so many ways people are using it. So it's kind of, that's inherently the challenge. So I think that's the teams that support that are the ones that can leverage that data at scale. I think there's a lot more ML orchestration and systems design that's happening. So it's like a deeply like engineering and scaled, like I would say, product opportunity. And then obviously we don't want to lose the human element. So like the qual and the quant and the UX is critical.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, because what we're getting towards is you know, when I first started, it was a collaboration between the CFO and the CMO, and now we're starting to see like the CIO and engineering play a bigger role because there is so much data. And so I'm curious, Nili, from your perspective, because you know, with commerce media, you're sitting so close to the moment of purchase. How are you combining data and creativity to make sure that you're building experiences designed to drive that purchase and drive growth?
Yeah, I think it comes down to 3 core principles for us, and I would say, though, those are principles that are important for commerce media, but I would posit kind of universal. You know, the first is ultimately around privacy and maintaining the integrity and security of the data itself that is engineered into everything we do. Mastercard is synonymous with safety, security, and trust, but it's really part of our process. We talked a lot about the design process here. So everything from privacy by design, our privacy teams being embedded in the product design and the go-to-market process. Standards around data responsibility, inclusion, safety, integrity. Like it's kind of all of those baked into the process itself, which is key to driving that trust and that growth. The second is around reach, right? We say at Mastercard, if it doesn't scale, it doesn't matter. Obviously, I'm in the company of some incredible companies here, right? That are all driving impact at scale. And so that ability to drive that reach is really important. And so again, meeting the consumer where they are, having the ability to touch consumers across geographies, across sectors, across surfaces, becomes part of kind of that holistic strategy. And then again, it's actually the outcomes. It's the results. It's not only anymore about chasing impressions. It's about outcomes. It's about attribution. And ultimately, it's about incrementality. That's certainly a core part of what we're doing, at least in commerce media. Being able to kind of attribute the sale, ultimately back to the impression and, again, the preference for that particular brand. So anyway, it's kind of first principles, I think, the companies ultimately that are able to reimagine how it's done and create value through those kinds of principles are the ones that will have the longest chance at sustainability.
That's great. I'm a little bit surprised it took us almost 30 minutes to get to incrementality in a conversation about the funnel, but it is a massive point, and I think like as we think about the future of the journey, driving incrementality is going to be absolutely critical. So I think with that, we have a couple minutes for questions. Do we have any questions from the group?
Yeah, I have a question for Thomas. I was kind of concerned when reading about Intuit Assist that OpenAI is going to have read and write access to quite a lot of financial information from users, which opens up a vulnerability for prompt injection, right? You have the possibility that people can hide things in invoices that are then being uploaded that will cause the AI to provide the malicious user with financial details for individuals or corporations. And I guess my primary question here, this seems like a major liability issue. When somebody's information gets rerouted to a place it's not supposed to go, to a malicious actor, who's responsible?
So I'll just go back to first principles and everything Nili said. We have taken the value of integrity and protecting our customer data incredibly seriously over our entire lives. And that's over 40 years as a company and leading in the software space for financial services. So this is not something we're about to loosen in any way in the new age of AI. In fact, it has to get even more important that we double down on protecting people's information and the security of that information. So that is something that we are already in deep conversations with OpenAI and how to make sure that will be true, no matter where we're serving the customer.
I had a question for the colleague from eBay. It's amazing because I've experienced that sort of nostalgic moment when I bought a couple of things. How do you think about AI and what you're doing as a way to compete against Facebook Marketplace, which has become very transactional but very prominent?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think part of what's central to eBay is this sense of community, and it is connected across countries and boundaries. So Facebook Marketplace, that is far more local. But when you have a hobby, a lot of these hobbies are so niche that it's very hard to find somebody who has the thing you need in your own town. So I think there's a real benefit to having a global platform where you can buy and sell these things, and that's how you develop these communities of people who share their passions.
Well, again, thank you all so much. This has been really exciting for me. I've actually learned a lot during this panel. Thank you all for coming. I think we're at a point now where, the journey is more exciting than ever. We are building these connected experiences designed to drive growth. We're building boundaries where it makes sense, and we're blurring those boundaries where it doesn't. It's truly an exciting time, and there's no better place than CES to start this conversation. So thank you all for joining in. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been great to get to know all of you. Please stick around. There's more panels to come. They're all equally as exciting as ours. I think ours will be the best, but I'm a little competitive. But yeah, thank you very much, and thanks to all of you.